Welcome to Fundamentals of People Management, Module 13. I'm Dr. Lon Schiffbauer, and today we are talking about managing change. There are few things as disruptive to an organization as change that is poorly managed. So today what we're going to talk about is different types of change, why employees resist, and ultimately how to help employees through the change. So first, let's talk about the different types of change. After all, not all change is equal, so let's break these down a little bit. First, we have structural changes. These are things like reorganizations, organizational changes, such as the hierarchy, who's in charge, or dividing departments, leadership changes, or maybe even changes in organizational objectives or departmental objectives. Next, we have process changes, things like the steps or protocols or processes that employees follow when doing their jobs. When we mess with the day-to-day work that an employee does, this introduces thrash to the organization. Next, we have policy changes. This can run the gamut from HR policies to perhaps absenteeism or tardiness, maybe performance management policies. Just about every aspect of work is managed by some policy somewhere. So when we change these policies, it changes the way we work. And once again, this introduces thrash. Then we have the never-ending technological changes, such as introducing new enterprise systems or upgrades, patches, things like that. We're talking about the tools that employees use on a daily basis always changing and employees having to navigate these changes just to get their job done. Then we can have strategic changes. This is when perhaps we move into a different market or introduce a new product or in some way or another change our value proposition to current or new clients. Finally, we can have cultural changes, things like changes in the values or norms that the organization follows. These often stem from the other changes that we talked about already, such as leadership changes or maybe mergers and acquisitions. All of these things affect the culture, the environment in which the employees do their work. Now, as you look at this list, you may be thinking to yourself, well, hell, all these sort of changes happen constantly. That's my point. As the cliche goes, change is the only constant. Now, ironic axioms aside, the takeaway from this is that change is constantly threatening to derail your people. And as their manager, it's your job to ensure that it doesn't. All right, so those are just a few examples of the types of changes that your employees are navigating practically every day. Now, as they do this, you'll often find that they resist the change. Let's talk about why this is. First, just about any of the changes that we went through brings about different expectations, and the employee may not be really clear on what the new expectations look like for them. What does success look like? What do you expect me to deliver based on this new environment? If an employee doesn't have a good understanding of their revised expectations, they're going to resist the change. They want to stay in that space where they had already had success previously. Now, just as an aside, this is part of your job. It is your job as a people manager to reset, to recalibrate these expectations so that employees understand the marching orders and where they're heading. Next, employees may feel a certain amount of complacency. After all, if they don't see a need for the change, if they're like, you know what, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, if they feel like everything is fine and copacetic as it is, then it's going to be hard for them to rouse themselves to institute this change. It takes a lot of energy, mentally, emotionally, all that sort of stuff, to change the way we do our work. And so if they don't see the need, they're not going to change. Now, related to this is conservatism. The way employees do their job now, they've invested a lot of time and energy and cognitive resources to being successful in that area. And it's like the old way treated me well before. I don't see why we're giving up what we have. It seems to work fine. So they're going to kind of hold on to the old ways because they feel a sense of loyalty to the old ways. There's also just plain conceit. Fact of the matter is, we really like to think that the way we do things is the best way, that we are following a best practice. So if we embrace this idea that we kind of like rock and roll at the same time, then why would we want to change? Another reason that employees may resist change is because they perceive, and perhaps correctly so, that they lack the skills to be successful in the new arena. They have all the skills and resources to be successful in the old world order, but as they look ahead, they start to think, gosh, I don't know if I have to bring to bear the skills that I will need to be successful heading this new direction. And so that being the case, they're going to be resistant to the idea of heading down that new direction. Now, skipping ahead a little bit, and we'll talk about things you need to do to help employees through change, but I just want to throw out there, it's your job, your responsibility as a people manager to ensure that your employees have the skills necessary, the skills and resources to be successful following this new approach. More about that later, but I wanted to make sure we threw that out there. Next, employees may perceive that a change challenges their raison d'etre, their reason for being. It's not uncommon for us to so completely wrap our sense of identity around our job such that if the job changes, then who are we? What is our identity? How do we perceive ourselves as a provider of value if the way that I've always provided value is no longer valuable? I know, that was convoluted, but here's what I'm saying. Many of us define our worth and value in this world based on our position and the work we do. So if our position and the work we do changes, then this affects our sense of value and worth. Next, employees may resist a change because they consider the change a breach of an ethical contract, some sort of agreement between the company, the employees, perhaps our clients, and so forth. If the change challenges something that we kind of hold near and dear as an ethical norm or value, then it's normal, it's natural that an employee would resist. Now, related to this, some employees may disagree with the nature of the change. In this case, an employee is saying, yes, perhaps change is necessary. I'm on board with you there. However, the change that you're recommending or how you're executing this change or the timing of this change, I disagree with these things. So while, yes, they're on board with the idea of change, they just don't like the way it's being managed. Finally, and you've probably felt this or have seen it or can sense it from everything we've discussed so far, some employees are just tired of all the change. Remember, we went through a whole litany of the types of changes that an organization can experience, and then there's all these responses to the change. This requires a lot of cognitive resources, a lot of mental energy, and at a certain point, the employee's just like, I don't care anymore. Just do whatever. I'm not engaged. I'm not supporting the change because, frankly, I'm tired of all the change. Okay, so we've talked about all the types of change and all the reasons and justifiable reasons, if I might add, that employees may resist change. So now we've got the Herculean task of helping employees navigate the change such that we come out the other side better off than when we went in. So let's talk about how to do this. First, you want to explain the why behind the change. This is really core. After all, if you don't have a clear understanding of the why, then it's hard for people to get behind it. Now, once you've explained the why, you can then head right into the benefits. Why are we doing this change? And what are the benefits waiting for us on the other side of this change? This means that you will want to kind of tap into the current problems and anxieties and frustrations that your employees bring to you all the time and say, all these things you've talked about, we can help mitigate for these. We can help change these if we do A, B, and C. So in this way, you're making the benefit personally applicable to them. And when something affects us directly, especially with the benefit on the other side, it's a lot easier for us to get motivated and support the change. Next, and as I alluded to earlier, you really want to make sure that they have all the skills, resources, time, anything they need to not only execute the change, but be successful in their new roles, their new responsibilities, or whatever is waiting for them on the other side of that change. That way they feel fully armed and ready to be successful. Now, as you do all this, you want to ask your employees for their input. After all, they have insights that you frankly may not have, nor your leadership. They are down at the customer level. That's where the rubber meets the road, any sort of metaphor you want to use. You want to listen to what they have to say and let their insights inform the change and the change process. Now, not only will this increase the odds of success because it is a more informed process and outcome, but you then will have their engagement. They will feel like they have a voice, and when they feel like they have a voice, it's easier for them to put their energy behind the activity. Now, following up on soliciting employee engagement by asking for input and helping them inform the process and the change, you want to allow them opportunities where possible to select how they implement the change for themselves, for their own departments, for their own teams, what have you. This way, they feel like they have a sense of autonomy and that rules and edicts are not just inflicted upon them from above, but that they, in fact, are intelligent beings who can take the new processes, the new inputs, the new changes, and apply them in a way that makes the most sense to them based on their experience, their education, their background, all that good stuff. Now, of course, you will want to make sure that all throughout this process, you are leading by example. After all, the change is going to affect you as well, not just the individuals, your employees, the team, and so forth. It's going to affect how you do your job and the expectations that your leadership has for you. So you'll want to make sure that you're blazing the trail. If the employees kind of perceive that you're hemming and hawing or sandbagging or not embracing the change, then you can be absolutely assured they're not going to embrace it either. Next, throughout this whole process, you will want to communicate frequently. Employees really hate a lack of information. Even if there's no information really to communicate and you go, oh, I don't have to send the update email this week or something like that. No. Always communicate. Always make sure that employees have their thumb on the pulse of how the change is going, what obstacles it's running into, what it's doing to mitigate for these, how far along the calendar it's moving, progress against schedule. Employees should have full, transparent visibility to everything related to the change. And finally, throughout this whole process, celebrate the small wins. Change isn't so much a one and done 9 months from now. It's more along the lines of a whole series of steps and milestones reached to finally accomplish the final desired outcome. Celebrate these milestones. Make sure that your employees know that they contributed to these milestones, that it's appreciated, that you are making progress, that we're getting closer and closer to that promised end state where we will all benefit from the, purported benefits of the change. So make sure that you include them in the thank yous and celebrations of the small wins. So there you go. There's a quick rundown of the change management process that you will need to consider as a people manager. Now, you are managing your employees in this change process, but you'll also need to think about your stakeholders. And that's what we're going to talk about in our next module. So stick around and let's make sure that we are managing our stakeholders just as well as we're managing our employees. All right? Hey, thanks a lot for joining today. And until we talk again, have a fantastic day.